When did your something is very wrong here gut instinct turn out to be right? I had a bad feeling about my aunt's boyfriend. Told my mom he seemed creepy and I didn't want to stay the night there anymore. I got a bit of a lecture for calling him creepy, but she made sure I was never around him alone. And good thing he turned out to be a child molester who is currently in jail for his involvement in a kiddie PRN ring. I was walking home and a woman approached me to ask for directions. I told her how to get where she wanted to go, but she didn't walk that way, but instead walked beside me and kept pace with me. This made me incredibly uncomfortable. So I said have a nice day and doubled my speed, not running, but outpacing her significantly. A moment later, I heard running footsteps. I must have instinctively gripped my purse strap, because I held on to it as she ran by and tried to snatch it. We ended up tussling for a moment. I shouted very loudly help. She's stealing my purse. Neighbors came outside, causing her to walk away. She did not get my purse. Driving with a friend of mine through a pretty remote forest road. Couple of guys in the middle of nowhere tried flagging us down. I almost stopped for them before an alarm went off in my head and I stepped on the gas. My friend started saying what the foo. And at the same time there was a shot and a bullet hit the back of the car. We made it to a police station. Turns out there had been a bunch of people and vehicles going missing in the area that same week. Freshman year of college. A friend and I were driving across town and he stopped for gas. It wasn't a dangerous part of town or anything. Just a quiet gas station with an old book out front. But this feeling came over me that we needed to get out of there. I tried to shake the feeling by making a joke. This feels like somewhere an axe murderer would hide out. My friend immediately gunned it out of there without filling up. He said he had the same feeling and me bringing it up too scared the shit out of him. On the way home there were about 20 police cars outside. It turns out some guy shot 2 people in a carjacking and robbery. The book was the car he stole. My friend asked me if I wanted to go out to the woods with him and explore abandoned places. He even specifically mentioned that he'll bring a firearm to keep us safe. My alarm bells were effing ringing. I asked him a couple questions. I don't know what, but concluded that it was sketchy as F. My gut told me not to go. So I exited from the conversation while he went asking others the same question. Fast forward a couple years I heard that he was in prison. I was stunned, but remembered the memory when he asked me if I wanted to go into the woods. Turns out he took a freshman, him being senior at that time, and kept his promise of looking for abandoned places. He found a cabin in the woods, brought his friend inside and as soon as his friend turned his back, bam. Knocked dead. He shot him in the back of the head. I reminisce on this quite often and think what if I had agreed? Every time I think of this I'm very grateful I'm alive. I stopped off at a dollar store to get last minute stuff for my niece's birthday party, foil or napkins or something. I went to the one I had never been to, in a seedy part of town. There weren't many other people there, since it was a Sunday afternoon. A luxury car pulls up and this gorgeous man gets out and starts trying to catch my eye. Like he wanted to ask directions. Dream come true, right? Except my gut started screaming run for no reason. I pretended I didn't see him and got in my car and left. The next morning I see on the news that 3 people were murdered in Charleston. They were all connected to one dude. One of their cars was stolen, and the serial killer was on the loose heading west through my area. Guess who the suspect was? Yep. The dude I'd seen. They arrested him after he'd kidnapped a girl in Augusta the same night I saw him. And she managed to escape. Still gives me goosebumps. What if I'd stopped and talked to him? I had a bad allergy season which turned into a bad sinus infection which turned into bronchitis. It wasn't getting any better. So I got into a GP. He said it could be bronchitis or something worse. He couldn't call it. As much as I hate hospitals, my gut was screeching at me that something was wrong. Went to ER just in case. I had multiple pulmonary embolisms. 1 in 3 people with one undiagnosed PA don't make it to the ER. The doc said my lungs glowed in the CAT scan. On the upside, I have a strong heart. So I have that going for me. If you think something is wrong, If you have that creeping, crawling sense of doom, panic, unease, and fear that settled on the back of your mind like a large spider, listen to it. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I began noticing that my kid was having a tough time potty training. He was drinking a lot and peeing a lot. I spoke with his ped about it and she dismissed it, saying we live in a warm area and toddlers are likely to drink more, and therefore pee more, and that I shouldn't hear hoofbeats and assume zebras. He had no other symptoms whatsoever. Happy, healthy looking little dude. I tried to calm myself down, but I just knew something wasn't right. Finally I took one of his massively full pull-ups and used a Kato strip to check his urine, and then proceeded to head right to the hospital. He was diagnosed with diabetes in November 2015. Got him a new pediatrician immediately. I was walking home when suddenly I had this gut feeling I will be mugged out. I kept walking. When I got to the corner, 2 guys jumped me. Started delivering some puns, but man, I'm no Rocky. My shirt was devastated. My nose was bleeding. I glassed flew like 3 meters away. Oh yeah, most importantly, got mugged anyway. In high school I came home early one Friday evening to find that my house just felt off. It's so hard to describe, but the feeling I got walking into my living room just immediately had me on alert and didn't feel right. I walked into the kitchen to find a half-eaten burger from McDonald's, which I found strange. Called out to my parents. Got no response. Called them on their cell. Got no answer. 30 minutes later my brother called to tell me that my dad had a heart attack and to get to the hospital. Thankfully it turned out okay. But my gut quite literally knew something bad had happened the moment I stepped in the front door. I have a coworker I've always found to be a little off and didn't like spending time with. We all thought he was off a little, but we wrote it off as just normal. It geek weird. Last Friday he was arrested for child PRN, sexual exploitation of children, and sexual assault of a minor and videoing. Not me, but one of my best friends growing up. Her mom told me this story. They had just bought this house that had a built-in swimming pool. My friend had a little brother who was under the age of 2 at the time. Everyone was taking a nap, but unbeknownst to the rest of the house, the 2-year-old had woken up and decided to go outside on their deck. I guess the mom woke up and had this terrible feeling come over here. Without hesitation she quickly checked on her children. Panic set in when she couldn't find the 2-year-old. She found him face down in the pool. He did survive the whole ordeal. If she wouldn't have felt that gut feeling to wake up, that little boy wouldn't be here today. I wish I could give more details on the story, but it was only told to me once when I was about 12. Middle school vice principal was loved by everyone in the school. I was always creeped out by him. In my 8th grade year he was found having sex with a previous student of his who was only 16 at the time. He had a wife and kids when this all went down. Tons of comments here, so not many will see this. But one day I was finishing up an essay in the library of my college when I saw someone through the slightly open blinds running. She could have been running to get to a class, meet someone, or 1,000 other things. For some reason I stood up. My girlfriend saw me stand up and ran to me immediately, and we ran out the emergency exit of the library. We then ran to the opposite end of the college where everyone was acting normal. We climbed down to the river, called my dad to pick us up down the road, and left the campus following the riverbed. Turns out the girl was running because someone was shooting people. The shooter was making his way into the library as we were running out. When we hit the emergency exit, the main doors locked from the outside and he was unable to enter the library, which led to him getting shot and killed by the police. Went out for beers with some friends. Guy at the bar kept staring at my female friend. Didn't think nothing of it initially, thought maybe he's just into her. Alarm bells start ringing for some reason. Minutes later he went to my friend, then saw him try to slip something in her drink while she was talking to another friend of ours. Good thing I was watching, told him to F off with that roofish. He tried to punch me but Miss Bouncer saw he got kicked out. Funniest part was that when we met up with a mate of mine from uni that night, he was beating ass for doing the same thing to his GF. Watch your drink, lads. Was walking through my hometown with mother and ex-stepdad. I was roughly 14, I think. Suddenly a man came up to us and greeted us. As soon as he shook my hand I knew something was very wrong. Ex-stepdad knew him, so they engaged in small talk. The whole thing lasted less than a few minutes. But the entire time I felt this very strange and strong uneasiness. I whispered to my mum that the man that came up really feels shifty despite his normal appearance and behavior, and I told her we should leave ASAP. When he left I asked her who that was. And she told me he was an acquaintance from way back, and he was also a man with some serious mental issues who was prone to sudden burst of psychosis that would send him into a violent rage. Turns out he ran away from his caretaker that day and was carrying a knife in his pants. He was caught later on during the day and brought back to the local mental facility. Thankfully the knife remained unused. I pulled into a gas station around 8 to 9 PM. That wasn't in a ghost town or anything. But it was insanely dark due to the time of year. As I pull towards one of the pumps, I see this dude slowly pacing near the entrance of the convenience store. And we make eye contact. I quickly pulled the car to another pump towards one of the entrances to the gas station. Trying to be safer but thinking I'm probably just being paranoid. Once I sit there for a minute and decide to put my car in park, he quickly rushes to my car. By the time I'm back in drive and peel out through the entrance into an oncoming lane, luckily no traffic, I saw him pulling out what looked like a large knife out of his jacket. I'm glad I didn't disregard my gut. Not me but my mom for me. When I was a baby, only a few months old, my mom felt a little lump on the right side near the bottom of my ribcage. She took me to my doctor and asked him to check, and he said it was nothing. A few weeks later she still felt it, so she took me to a different doctor and the same thing happened. It wasn't until she took me to a third doctor and demanded tests be done that they found I had a tumor growing. Not me but I got told this story from my doctor. He was an aviation doctor in Australia. A pilot got recommended to visit a doctor because the company said he wasn't acting quite right. My doctor couldn't diagnose him with any disorders or illnesses, thus sent him on his way. The company wasn't sold that he was all there and ended up paying him out. A few years later, my doctor got a call from the pilot's wife warning him to be careful, and apparently he's on his way back across the country for reasons his wife couldn't explain. My doctor, being the paranoid Pete that he is, called the AFP, Australian Federal Police, and got them to check his bags and his overall mental state at the border. Turns out he had a few guns in his luggage with a note containing names and addresses. One of which was my doctor. My aunt's dog always gets anxious during storms and hides in their basement. There's not much she can do to comfort him. So at this point, she doesn't usually bother trying, and just waits for the storm to pass. But one night, about 2 years ago, there was a really awful storm while she was reading in her bedroom. She got a feeling that she had to go check on the dog right then, and went down to the basement. While she was down there, a huge tree fell, smashing half her house. The bedroom she'd been reading in was completely destroyed. I started learning to play the alto saxophone when I was 11 at my Christian primary school. Absolutely hated my music teacher. There was something about him that made my body physically react in a get away from me manner. I would frequently beg to skip lessons, fake being sick, tell my mum I hated it and didn't want to learn anymore, so eventually, she took me to a private external tutor. Fast forward to 10th grade. He was sentenced to jail for 8 counts of sexual misconduct and 3 counts of statutory RE. My mum never questioned my gut after that. I'm so thankful I never was alone with that man. There was a rural highway that had a few driveways on it. The car in front of me was making a left turn into a driveway and was waiting for cross traffic to stop. I kindly leaned back and took a deep sigh, and then immediately felt impending doom. My thought was, wouldn't it be freaky weird if I got into a car accident? Then a dump truck rear-ended me at 70 miles per hour. By all means I should be dead, but I actually walked away with nothing more than shattered glass ending up all over my face. Because a utility truck between us, I was saved from death.